The process to establish our innocence can only be through an independent, impartial, objective inquiry. I think it is completely wrong to suggest that this is some issue about getting people in from private sector. It's not. It is squarely an issue concerning Ms. Madhabi Puri Buch, the individual. It's $6 trillion worth of stock market capitalization, 100 million investors, 10,000 foreign funds. I have had foreign investors call me personally asking me what is happening. Is this true? Not true? With concern.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining me again. Today, I'm trying to get into a story that's pretty complex and complicated, and some of the details are flying above my head. But it's an important story because it brings up a lot of ethical issues in the business space. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the allegations and accusations that are being leveled against the chairperson of SEBI, India's stock market regulator, Madhabi Puri Buch. Madhabi Puri Buch was appointed as the chairperson of SEBI in 2022. She's the first woman in the job. She's the first person from the private sector, and she's perhaps the youngest person in this powerful position of the leader of India's stock market regulator. But these allegations that have been made starting August, first by Hindenburg Research and now by the Congress Party, suggest impropriety, conflict of interest, and maybe corruption. Now, these are all allegations. These are not proven at all, but these are being put out there, and they've brought the credibility of the markets regulator under a big cloud. To understand these allegations, to see whether we should accept what the Congress Party and some of the other people who are making these allegations are saying, I'm talking today to Praveen Chakravarty. He's with the Congress Party, as you know. Praveen, thank you very much for making time. You heard my disclosure up front. This is a complex story, and I'm struggling with a lot of details that are emerging. Why don't you start by helping us understand why it is so important that SEBI's chairperson has to be completely above board, above any kind of suspicion of wrongdoing?
Thank you, Anuradha. See, I think as an economist, I will tell you, one of the most fundamental factors that drive an economy and hence markets is this issue of trust and credibility. And I think too often we don't pay much attention to the importance of that. I remember Dr. Manmohan Singh wrote an opinion piece about nearly 3-4 years ago saying the problem today is one of trust. So we have to look at a lot of things through the prism of trust and credibility. And trust is important because India's stock markets today has nearly 100 million Indians with their savings invested in the stock markets. Why are so many people investing in the stock markets? Because they believe that the markets will be regulated properly. They can trust the markets. And while you say that you don't understand much of the details, I can assure you, your savings is also in the stock markets.
Yeah, via mutual funds.
Exactly, right? And 100 million Indians and nearly 10,000 foreign funds have invested. And this is excellent. I'm the first to say this is good for the Indian economy. We need this. Now, why is this investment happening? Because there's an underlying trust and credibility. Now, what has happened is this issue of trust and credibility has come under a cloud of suspicion because of the charges against the chairperson of the regulatory authority of the markets. So if your trust in police go down, would you go walk out on the streets, without any fear? You would not. You'd probably stay at home.
So it's who is going to regulate the regulator. That is where we are That is the fundamental question. Now, to answer that question, let us take a look at the Congress Party's charges, because those are the charges that have emerged in the last week or so. You've done press conferences. Your colleague Pawan Khera has done press conferences. And I'm going to take a look at 2 or 3 of the key allegations that have come forward. The first set of allegations are linked to Madhabi Puri Buch's tenure as an employee of ICICI. The first set of allegations are about retirement benefits or stock options she's exercised, recently before she became chairperson. But the fact is that these are all terms and conditions of a private employer and employee and their conditions. Her employer is a listed company. It's regulated by the RBI, by SEBI. Why should we have a problem with those ESOPs that were exercised, the money that she earned from what is rightfully hers, perhaps according to the terms and conditions of her employment agreement?
Yeah, I think first we must go to the root of all of this. The first charge against the SEBI chairperson, Ms. Buch, was not brought out by a political party, by an opposition party, but it was by an American research firm.
Okay, so let's start with the charges that came out in August, the Hindenburg Research.
It was the same firm that made allegations against a certain industry group,
Yeah.
to which everybody did report and thought that was fairly legitimate. Now, when the same group, in connection with the same investigation, has said that there are investments by Ms. Buch and her family members in a fund that has associations and links with the Adani Group of companies, is this kosher? Again, I want to be very clear. This was not an allegation made by the Congress party.
Yes. These were allegations made in August by Hindenburg Research.
Correct.
Which she and her husband replied to and refuted. And you're saying that, and so did SEBI. SEBI put out a press release, and you're saying that is not good enough.
So, okay. Yeah, I will tell you. First, SEBI response.
Yeah.
Now, if there is an allegation of corruption against a minister, the ministry does not respond. The minister responds. Why is SEBI responding? Who asked SEBI to respond? Second, the Indian Venture Capital Association and the Association of Mutual Funds, which is 2 industry bodies, they respond. When there is an allegation against a minister, let's say a steel minister, does the Steel Industry Association respond? No. Why? Who asked these people to respond? What is going on behind the scenes? Is this not cause for suspicion and concern? Number 1. Number 2, she responds. She responded with various details. Okay, there was a childhood friend and was associated with Adani and all of those things. Fine, perfectly okay. Who is to say whether it's right or wrong? Shouldn't there be an inquiry?
Okay.
Shouldn't there be? I am absolutely not saying she is guilty until proven innocent. Absolutely not. But how would we go through this process? The process to establish her innocence can only be through an independent, impartial, objective inquiry. That is all we asked for. When suddenly there is this fear of an inquiry, or constituting an inquiry, and then you've got BJP ministers, members of parliament, SEBI, Indian Venture Capital Association, Association of Mutual Fund Industries, all coming out aggressively and responding, and the tired old excuse of nationalism. Some foreign firm is apparently plotting to attack India's economy. Let me be clear. India's economy is $6 trillion. $4 trillion. We're not under attack. We're not that weak to be thrown out by some research from outside, right? So then why? A, not considering an inquiry. B, you've got all these decks lined up to go out and attack. And C, the tired old nationalism, patriotism excuse. Does this not cause suspicion or not? So this was the fountainhead of all of this. Then comes the ICICI thing. ICICI
charges that the Congress party has brought forward in September.
Correct. So the ICICI link allegation is no one is saying that she cannot be granted employee stock options. No one is saying that that was wrong or right or any of those things. Very simple. Very simply put, she stood to gain income through the stock price of ICICI. Correct? Who regulates the stock price of ICICI? She. So is this a conflict or not? If this is a conflict of interest, was this disclosed? And this is where I think most people are missing the forest for the trees. The issue is not about whether she had the right to earn employee stock options or when was it given or what was the vesting. The simple matter, she stood to gain from a certain instrument that was being regulated and policed by her. So tomorrow, let us say there was some scandal that came out of ICICI, which could have impacted the stock price, which needed SEBI's approval. Are we to believe that she would have been she would have operated with a clear conscience and said yes, knowing fully well that it can bring her income down? Maybe she's maybe she has the highest standards of ethics and integrity. But who is to say that? We need to conduct that. So it is that is important. And I want to give you two counter examples. Okay. When there was a former SEBI chairman, Mr. Damodaran, who was appointed as SEBI chief, in his earlier avatar, he had 50 shares of State Bank of India. He was a public servant, an IAS officer. 50 shares of State Bank of India. The moment he took charge, he sold those. Second example, Nandan Nilekani was the chairman of Infosys. He came, joined Aadhaar.
Yeah, the UID. Yeah.
He was not even regulating the Infosys stock price. He was in government. What did he do? He had clear, full disclosure, transferred it to a trust. So I think that this is the point that everyone's missing.
But Praveen, we are proceeding on the assumption that she has not made these disclosures, that she has not recused herself when any conflict of interest because of these arose while she was, in SEBI at various meetings where this may have come up. So we are assuming that she did not do this. That assumption, why should we make that assumption? Why should we not believe that she did go with SEBI's code?
Do you know that she has done it?
You're saying we need proof that she did it, and that will come from an independent inquiry. Is that what you're saying?
So what did the same ICICI Bank do for another colleague or peer of Ms. Buch, which is Chanda Kochar, who was the CEO of ICICI Bank? There were allegations made against the CEO. What did they say? What did they do? They actually asked her to step aside and said the board will constitute an inquiry.
Right. But
and she said exactly the same thing. She said, I recused myself. I disclosed it. But there was an inquiry there.
So it's for SEBI to do an inquiry or the government of India to do an inquiry at this point of time. Is that what we need to say?
The inquiry has to be an impartial, objective inquiry, which means it can only be impartial and objective if it does not involve SEBI or does not involve the government of India, but has a body that either constitutes a joint parliamentary committee of all members of parliament or a parliamentary committee that has many members or an independent committee set up under the chairmanship of a former Supreme Court judge or any of them.
And it cannot have the government of India conducting this inquiry because it's the government of India that has appointed Madhabi Puri Buch as the chairperson via the political appointments committee that's headed by the Prime Minister. Is that the reason you're saying the government of India cannot conduct this inquiry?
That is one, and also their actions. Why did ministers in the cabinet come out to defend Ms. Buch against an allegation made by an American research firm? Why did BJP MPs come out to defend? So we don't trust the impartiality of the government in conducting an inquiry because of their actions.
You referred to the fact that various different organizations have come forward to offer defense on behalf of Madhabi Puri Buch. We've just got this bunch of, answers or explanations offered by a bunch of people We don't know who they are, but they claim to be friends and well-wishers of Madhabi Puri Buch, who probably studied with her and trust her and vouch for her integrity. You've gone through those. What do you make of some of them? Especially though, there's one thing that I'm very curious about, which is that when she was in Singapore, she worked with a PE firm called Greater Pacific Capital, and she was allowed to do this by her employer, ICICI Bank, at that point, which had paused her employment. Throw some light on this. Do you buy this argument that the ICICI Bank saw no conflict and said, go ahead with this? And obviously, they valued her enough to allow for this. I didn't understand this particular connection.
See, Anuradha, you know this. Unlike other politicians, come from the private sector.
Yeah, exactly.
I've spent 2 decades in exactly the same industry that we are talking about.
Yeah.
And in the spirit of full disclosure, I've served on secondary market committees and primary market committees when Ms. Buch was a whole-time member of SEBI. Well, so I think a lot of practices do happen in the private sector. Okay. Now, it is somewhat unusual for a large firm such as ICICI to allow one of their top executives to be employed in 2 different firms at the same time. And they're not, one is not, it wasn't something where she was running a restaurant and then she was running a bank. These are completely related. It is unusual. But you can still argue that, that's between her and ICICI Bank and all of that. The question is, when somebody from the private sector says, I have now made the money, I now need the power of being in public office, and I need that authority. Along with that comes a much, much, much greater share of responsibility and the need to be seen as transparent and integrity. And that is where I've seen that letter that you're referring to from our batchmates at IIM Ahmedabad, and I'm sorry to say this is a classic private sector professional view. I say that as one who was former and now in public life. They don't seem to understand the idea of a conflict of interest and the need, the demands of being in public office. We are responsible. She is responsible for 100 million investors. So the need to be absolutely above any cloud of suspicion is what is important, not this technical detail that letter very shallowly talks about, which is whether she's eligible to get and not. In the private sector, all may be fair. The moment you make that transition to public office, you seek public office, you desire public office, you want that power, be prepared for greater scrutiny, for greater transparency, for greater accountability.
Which brings me to a natural question that, a lot was made of the fact that Madhabi Puri Buch was the first person from the private sector to be appointed chairperson of SEBI. And here we are saying that when you worked in the private sector, especially in the financial markets and in this really complex sector, changing also, very highly regulated as well, you will come with wealth, you will come with investments, you will come with a very different kind of, background and experience than Mr. Damodaran, whose example you cited a little while back. So does that mean that we should not have this kind of a private sector lateral entry into the public sector and into a regulator in India?
Not at all. You're talking to one who's in public life. Just as I gave the example of Mr. Damodaran, I also gave you the examples of Nandan Nilekani, who's a quintessential private sector professional who came and did a fabulous job in the UPA government with Aadhaar, with absolute, transparency. And this is not the one. We've had, I would say, perhaps an equally important or even greater important institution right in Mumbai, is the RBI, the Reserve Bank of India. And we've had Dr. Raghuram Rajan, Dr. Urjit Patel come from the private sector. Urjit Patel used to be with IDFC in Mumbai. He went to and there was absolutely no problem. We have chief economic advisors, including the current one, Dr. Anantha Nageshwaran, who've come from the private sector. We've had no problems. So I think it is completely wrong to suggest that this is some issue about private sector, getting people in from private sector. It's not. It is squarely an issue concerning Ms. Madhabi Puri Buch, the individual.
Hmm. Okay. Let's talk about another allegation that you'll have made, and that is about this firm that she and her husband ran, which she, claims to have that they both went dormant after she became the chairperson. But firms that have made money and where she still continues to be the owner of the firm, even if she's not a director. Um, what do you make of this? Help us understand these, because other companies, listed companies, large corporations like Mahindra, Pidilite, Wockhardt, Dr. Reddy's, these were all named by the Congress party. So help help us understand that. Did you all get it right there completely? Did those connections that you all made and the leaps that were made to reach those conclusions, were they all credible?
No, absolutely. I think it was factual. Okay, it was factual in the sense what happened. The SEBI chairperson continues to have an interest in a firm, a consulting firm, which earns income through a set of corporates. Okay, and these corporates are also being regulated by SEBI. These are factual. Now, whether they're credible or not, in the sense whether there was actually a quid pro quo, only an inquiry can establish that, right? But that's what I'm saying. I think this idea of a
companies
conflict.
have denied These companies have denied it, and it's on public record who was being investigated or what matter was under SEBI scrutiny at these periods of time. So why should that be part of an inquiry?
Because, Anuradha, again, we have to understand the idea and the need to be above suspicion of all kinds, because this is public office. So here's a simple question, a counter question I have. If she's already earned all that wealth, why this continued desire? Why couldn't she say, I am going into public office?
Fair. That is that a fair question to ask?
It is a fair question when you're in public office. Leave public office and go and earn. This is where the problem is with the private sector professionals. They want the cake and they want to have the cake and eat it too, which is they want to continue to earn because and also want the power and the authority and the responsibility of public office. There is a fundamental contrast and conflict, which is what I'm trying to point out. I'm saying there's absolutely nothing wrong in earning income. In fact, I'm all for wealth creation. I speak as someone who's done that in the past. But when you are in public office, when you're responsible for 100 million people, if I just call an average person in Mumbai who's invested in the stock markets and say, here's the story. She has a company. She's had that company for a long time. That company has clients, Mahindra and these Dr. Reddy's and others. She's also the regulator. Are you comfortable with it? What do you think the answer would be? So, very clear. It is this idea of conflict, and we're going on and on about the details of whether there was this one, whether there was actually a quid pro quo, is she not allowed to earn income? Let us understand
Is her husband not allowed to earn income? That is also a question, isn't it?
No, it is all about being very clear in terms of conflict of interest. Okay. And like I said, it is, we've had a very similar example with ICICI and Chanda Kochar. It was again her husband there that was involved. Right. So we've had these sorts of issues, and there she was not even in public office. So it is this question of a conflict, a clash between the demands of public office versus the rights of a private sector professional.
Does the SEBI code need to be relooked at? Is that something now that needs to be reworked? Because clearly it's not good enough, because we've all been working under the assumption that all of this was disclosed, all of the recusals happened when needed, disclosures happened when they were needed, and this was all above board within the framework of the SEBI code for its whole-time directors, for its chairperson. What should happen here? Because you don't then feel that SEBI's own code of conduct is equipped to do the job when it comes to these kind of issues.
Sure, we can try and relook at the codes and the regulations, and ultimately, Anuradha, my belief is it comes down to the individual. I mean, having been in the markets, ex-stock markets for a long time, we've had various rules about insider trading and all of that, including on Wall Street in America. And we still continue to have insider trading. And, there is that lure of easy money in the markets. And ultimately, it just boils down to the individual's own sense of probity, standards of probity, transparency, and integrity. So I'm for relooking at the code and all of that. But again, like I said, there have been other examples. There have been examples in the RBI. There have been examples with Nandan Nilekani. There have been examples in the chief economic advisor positions. Why? Well, I mean, why is SEBI some sort of a unique body where we can't be able to balance this? It just comes down to the individual.
We know that TMC MP Mahua Moitra has filed this complaint, taking the allegations that the Congress party has brought to light, that Hindenburg Research has brought to light, factoring in responses and presented it to the Lok Pal. The Lok Pal has accepted it at this point of time. We know that the Public Accounts Committee, which doesn't have direct oversight on this matter, also may want to consider, looking at this or doing, sort of not investigating this, but at least having a hearing perhaps with Madhabi Puri Buch. What is the way forward now, given that we see silence from Madhabi Puri Buch? We have two official statements from SEBI that are not signed, so they're not attributed to any one person or a group of people at SEBI. One reacting to the Hindenburg Research allegations and refuting them, and the other reacting to the employees of SEBI who've been protesting against the work culture that Madhabi Puri Buch has created, and their problems with it. So what's the way forward? What do you expect? And and if you don't get it, because it's been a while now and there doesn't seem to be any reaction.
Yeah, this whole thing, in my view, this is my view, has been handled rather shabbily by Ms. Buch. I think that the real right thing to have done when the first allegation came out was to have said, listen, I'm absolutely innocent. I'm willing to step aside, conduct an inquiry, and prove my innocence. Not only did she not do that, there were all these other sorts of maneuvering in terms of who will respond. And I have never seen where the charges are being made against individual and the family members, and we have a slew of institutions and companies responding. They are only indirectly implicated. The person who's directly implicated is just so there's a certain tone of arrogance in that in the way this has been handled. The second is there is no trust in the government's ability to do an impartial and objective inquiry because of the way things have been handled and because of the allegations with one particular industry group, which is a friend of the government and all of that. So the ideal thing to have done was to go through an independent. The government seems very reluctant to do that, which is where what Mahua Moitra has done is very significant. She's filed a Lok Pal complaint. By law, and the Lok Pal complaint has been accepted. By law, now the Lok Pal has to respond within 30 days. If they do not respond, it will be a problem. And if they do respond, then it has to be handed over to CBI and ED. Which I must point out, Ms. Mahua Moitra knows fairly well because she was personally a subject and a victim of the exact same process that the BJP unleashed on her for her personal life, which is rather sad. So I think this is a very significant development, Mahua Moitra's complaint, Lok Pal complaint. And it is, again, I'll be the first to say, let's not indulge in a tutu meme. A lot of this is going on only because of the tone of arrogance in the response that in the way this has been handled. Let us stop this. It's $6 trillion worth of stock market capitalization, 100 million investors, 10,000 foreign funds. I have had foreign investors call me personally asking me what is happening. Is this true? Not true? With concern. So let us put an end to all of this. Let's just have an inquiry. And whatever that inquiry be, we will all accept as long as it's objective, independent, and impartial.
And for that, you want it to be a JPC inquiry, is it? A Joint Parliamentary Committee inquiry.
Only then it would be objective and impartial. We can't have a bunch of SEBI insiders or government ministers conducting an inquiry, or let the Lok Pal process go through, or let a parliamentary standing committee look at this, or have a committee set up by a former Supreme Court judge.
You mentioned the posture of Madhabi Puri Buch's in this entire saga as it plays out. The stance that she has taken reeks of arrogance. You have interacted with her personally. What is this about individual ego, or is this about somebody who has the blessings of the government in this role and feels that they can get away with with what you and a lot of other people believe she's getting away with it with?
No, first I must clarify. I've had maybe a couple of meetings because we were in the same committee, and that was more than a decade ago. I mean, it was like 13 years ago. I haven't been in touch at all since then. I'll tell you, I mean, what we didn't talk about is her style and behavior that 500 officers of SEBI who were working under her have brought out. This is not us saying. This is not anybody else saying. 500 officers. Now, I am not saying the officers are right and she is wrong. We don't know. But when 500 of your officers come out in protest, and what was their accusation? That the work environment is very toxic and there was a climate of fear and authoritarianism. That was their allegation. I've run companies. I've run a big bank, large. If somebody does that, my first response is not going to be, oh, you're instigated by some external forces.
Which is what SEBI said in its press release.
Which is, I mean, for SEBI to come out with a statement saying 500 of their officers are being instigated by external forces. Is that not arrogance? Second, are you not demeaning and putting down your own staff in front of everybody, saying that they are so weak that they can be instigated? And 500 of them, not 1, 2, 10, dozens, 500.
And undermine their integrity.
Undermine them. So this is the classic example of perhaps the personality, perhaps the tone of the chairperson of SEBI, because this is almost unheard of, to accuse 500 officers of being or demeaning them and shaming them in public just because they went out. They complain about you.
There is a question mark on the investigation into all the allegations made against the Adani Group, isn't it, by Hindenburg Research last year?
Correct. There is there may be a question mark, but it is now well documented that if Indian media may have chosen not to have followed up on that story, but foreign media everywhere, including the venerable Financial Times, have shown documents about suspicious activity, right? So I think it is important for us to convey the signal, send a signal to foreign investors that we're not saying there are going to be no issues and no scandals in the market. But when there are, we will handle it in a proper, clean manner, like we've done in the past. Satyam scandal or UTI mutual fund. So there will continue to be issues. How we react and handle them is the sign of maturity of a country, of its economy. And we are no longer some small country with a small economy.
And this is an unprecedented situation, isn't it? We've never had this kind of spotlight and this kind of a cloud over SEBI.
Unfortunately, so yes. Unfortunately, yes. And I think there is this larger concern about politicization of institutions, and I am very disheartened to say that trend seems to have now continued with SEBI as well. We saw that with RBI and demonetization, if you remember. And unfortunately, another Mumbai institution is being subject to this. And I really wish the SEBI chairperson sees this larger picture, puts aside any ego, and does this for the sake of the country.
Praveen, thank you for explaining it to us. I think there's a lot of information out there for people to chew on to try and understand better. And these are allegations, and you've made a case for your allegations. We now need to hear what the other side says, if those presentations are made directly by the person who is being questioned or the government. Thank you very much, Praveen, for making time. As usual, we'll keep talking.
Certainly. Thank you. Thank you, Anuradha.